Very heavy-handed producer. I can't really see him doing a David Lee Roth album, although that is interesting fact. It's almost like he produces the album. It's almost like you co-make the album with Bob Ezrin. He's very heavy-handed. You could ask Kiss about that. He's an excellent producer, but he really dives deep into what he does. So that's sort of interesting. And Rocket Ricochet, it's surprising that he was actually considered to be on that album. I didn't know that he was early on in the stages with that. That's something interesting there. I had no idea.
I knew because he has a songwriting credit on one of the songs for that album.
Right, that's true. I think we talked about that with him when we interviewed him, too.
Yeah, so yeah. I think he was like either trying to get on it or he was slated at one point, and he ultimately didn't get the gig.
Well, we have a gentleman by the name of Darwin, who I believe is from Australia, and he has asked us, how many times have you seen Van Halen or David Lee Roth? Here in Australia, Van Halen came in 1998 with Gary, which was awesome, and then Van Halen did a one-off show years ago in Sydney, which I missed out on. But I got to see Diamond Dave back on the Skyscraper Tour. I tell everybody it's on top of my list now that I have seen everybody, and what does Australia get? Another Kiss or Bon Jovi tour. So he wants to know how many times we've seen Van Halen and how many times we've seen Roth. So I tallied up mine. I get a little hazy with Roth because I've seen him. It's hard because Van Halen, you can go by albums, you know what I mean? And so like Van Halen, I saw them in 1986 on the 5150 tour once. Then I saw them in 1988 on the Monsters of Rock tour. Then in 91, I think I saw them 3 times, which was twice at the Philly Spectrum and once at Nassau Coliseum. Then I saw him twice in 1993 at Jones Beach, twice in 1995, once at the Coliseum, once at Jones Beach. Then I saw him twice in 98, once at Jones Beach, once at Madison Square Garden. Then I saw him in 2004 with you in Jersey. Then in 2007, I saw them 3 times. Twice at the Garden, once at Nassau Coliseum. Then I saw them in 2012, 3 times. I saw them twice at the Garden and once in Connecticut. And then in 2015, I saw them once in Connecticut and once at Jones Beach. So that's a grand total of like 20 times for Van Halen. For Roth, I saw him twice in 1986, once at Nassau Coliseum, once at the Madison Square Garden. Once in 1988 at Madison Square Garden, twice in 1991, once at Jones Beach and once in Jersey with you. And then I saw him in 94, once at the Academy in Manhattan with you, and then we went out to Malibu and saw him on Long Island. That's twice there. And then in 95, we saw him once at Foxwoods. This is where it starts to get hazy. So I can't remember the exact years, but I remember seeing him at CPI's. I saw him at Westbury Music Fair. I saw him at the Beacon Theater. I saw him at that time we opened for Bad Company in, what was that, in Pennsylvania?
Yes.
And then we saw him in Jersey on the Sam and Dave tour. And then I remember seeing him at the Best Buy Theater in Manhattan. So that is a grand total of, I believe, 14 times. What about you, Dave?
I think I have basically seen them half the time you have, because I don't do multiple shows.
Right.
But I've seen every Van Halen tour since 91, since the For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge tour. Dave I've seen also since 91 for the Little Ain't Enough tour.
Right.
And in 94, I did see him twice. It did break my rule, and I did see him twice.
Yeah.
And we actually met him twice.
Right.
On that tour.
That was hard to believe. Yeah.
That was a little cray. Yeah. So I guess I've seen Van Halen all told about half a dozen times.
Yeah.
Maybe a little more than that. Roth about the same.
Yeah. Yeah. I tell you, I had such a hard time putting together the years past the Sam and Dave tour that Dave toured, because he was just touring and he was playing all over the place. It was crazy. Like, do you even remember the year we saw him at CPI's? Wasn't that like right around the DLR band out? Like, was it like?
Yeah, I want to say it was definitely before I had kids.
It was like 99.
I want to say it was like 98, 99.
Right. Something like that, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, we are on to our next letter, and this comes from Robert Burton, and he says, I'd like to know the results of the Noel Monk auction. I couldn't find anything online. Do you have any idea what the highest of the netting items were? So, Robert, I went out of my way and contacted Jacques Von Gruel from Backstage Auctions, and these are your answers to your questions. The single highest item sold was the set of 3 tour itineraries from the 1978 tour with Black Sabbath. Those itineraries sold for a whopping $14,100. And as a side, the set with 3 itineraries from the 1978 tour with Journey sold for $11,000. If you can believe that, Dave. So look at this. So these old ratty-tat-tat notebooks that have been sitting in a box in Noel's garage for God knows how many decades totaled almost $25,000.
I know. Isn't that amazing?
Unbelievable. So Jacques also wanted our listeners to know that the auction overall was an astounding success. Noel is over the moon, knowing that so much of his Van Halen memorabilia has found new homes across the globe, with bidders from virtually every single continent. And it wasn't just Van Halen memorabilia that sold well. There was an equal interest in his Sex Pistols and Gasoline collections. Yes, there are some unsold items, both Van Halen and non-Van Halen related, and they will be featured in the online store around the end of November. So if you guys want to check that out, BackstageAuctions.com, click on store towards the end of November, and you'll see what's available. It said there are a little over 75 Van Halen lots left, most of which are photos and slides and negatives. However, there are some shirts and jackets still available, as well as some original artwork, paper goods, and a few miscellaneous pieces. So it should go on sale the week after Thanksgiving. So listen to that. Thank you so much, Jacques, for that nice update. He was kind enough to do that for us. What do you make of that, Dave? What is your assessment of all those monies?
Sounds like Noel's got a nice little retirement package.
That's
going
right.
There, so.
Noel just had a very, very, very successful garage sale.
Right. yes. An estate sale.
Right. We'll call it an estate sale. Right. Exactly.
Right.
I would love to have seen Noel's wife's face when she found that information out. That must have been very exciting. And also, we are on to our next letter from Matt Fowler from Lincoln, Nebraska. And he says, thanks for the awesome podcast. I listen every month. I have a couple of questions for you. Would you happen to know who took the photo of the band in straitjackets that appeared on the dust jacket for the Why Can't This Be Love single? I love that photo, and I have been trying to find a print or poster for it for years, but never had any luck. So I'm going to answer that part right now. The photographer is a female photographer by the name of Bonnie Schiffman, and her last name is spelled Schiffman. So good luck trying to find that. Then he goes on to say, I love the Damon Johnson interview. It's always great to hear the perspectives of other great guitarists who have been influenced by or have toured with King Edward. I have always wanted to hear about how Vito Bratta, one of my favorite guitarists from the 80s, came to be influenced by Eddie and adopted his style. Do you think you can get him on the podcast? Well, I will tell you this regarding Damon Johnson. Damon has a new album out on Pledge Music called Memoirs of an Uprising. You can check out that album if you like. Damon's a really cool guy and an excellent musician, very talented. And Vito Bratta, I have reached out, Matt, to Vito Bratta to get him on the podcast, and we are waiting to hear back. We will see. I'd love to have Vito on. I like his band White Lion, and I do understand that there is a direct correlation between his style and Edwards, so we would love to talk to him. So hopefully that will come to pass.
Wow, that would be a coup, because he has been out of the music industry for a while now,
I know, right? Yeah.
I mean, he's almost like, like, I haven't seen anything from him in a while. I don't want to use the term hermit or recluse or anything like that, but he's very, very quiet.
Right,
so.
yeah, no, he's very quiet. We'll see if we can pull him out of his shell, Dave, and come on the podcast. That would be great. And
I guess we'll just have to wait. See what I did there?
Oh, that was fantastic.
Thank you.
That was right in the moment. I will give you full credit on that. That was fantastic.
All righty.
Yep, it's that kind of thing that makes me fall in love with you all over again.
Oh.
So here we go. So we'll move on to our next letter. It says, "Hey, Dave and Dave, I sat out the last October mailbag because I didn't want to be a stalker. So I laughed my ass off when I heard myself get name-checked. I think it's great that a community is forming around the pod, and I am mailbag famous." Now, who do you think we're talking about here, Dave? Take a guess.
Oh, it's got to be, is it Shannon the Dude?
No, it's Shannon the Dude. Oh, my God. And in classic Shannon the Dude style, he sent in a letter that is nice and long, so I'm going to shorten it. And he says, "To that end, I have a quickie and hypothetical question for you." Then he goes on for 2 pages. This guy's a character. Unbelievable, this guy. He says, since the other Dave loves hypotheticals.
Oh, yes, my favorite.
Yeah, exactly. And he says he's going to save. He already has a question ready for December, by the way. He says he's going to save. He's going to save it. So he says, "First up, I love Dave's rant about playlists, and I agree. Do you have any suggestions for my Sammy playlist from his post-Van Halen career? I know the solo stuff, Montrose, Chickenfoot, and the album Eddie played bass on, but I have zero command of the solo albums from Sammy's later years. What should I add to my playlist?" I'm going to stop it right there, and I'm going to say, it's so simple. Shannon the Dude. Go get the album This Is Sammy Hagar. That album is a perfect compilation of Sammy post Van Halen. It is exactly what you need. It's on Spotify, or if you want to download it from iTunes or whatever you want to do, get a physical copy. It is fantastic. So I have said that before. I will say it again. That is a perfect Sammy Hagar compilation. You have any other things to add to that, Dave?
I mean, it's really easy these days to listen to the albums and see which songs you like, which is really what you have to do with Sammy. Because my takeaway is that for every album he has, there's like 3 or 4 songs that are worth putting on a playlist, and the rest you don't need. But I find opinions vary greatly on what those 3 or 4 songs are. But I don't have any specific recommendations off the top of my head. If he's saying later period albums, if he means by after he left Van Halen, there's the typical stuff like Mas Tequila is always a good one.
Right.
The album Not For Sale.
Yeah, you always love that, yeah.
I do, which is ironic because it really wasn't for sale because the record company went under right after the album came out. There was really some strong stuff on that album, and it's one of his more unheralded albums. It's kind of like DLR Band for David Lee Roth. It's just one of those albums that really rocks hard, has decent songs on it.
Flew under the radar,
and just completely flew under the radar.
Yeah.
So I would check that album out because there's definitely some really good nuggets there.
Sure, absolutely. And then he goes on for a hypothetical, but it's not a what if, but maybe it is a what if. I don't know, you tell me. He says, so you have the opportunity to drive cross country with a member of Van Halen. Who do you choose? Just to sum this up for you, he said, Alex, he thinks there'll be a little too much awkward silence. He says, with Dave, he thinks his energy would get to him. With Gary, he seems like a cool guy, but he doesn't know what he'd talk about. And he says, with Eddie, it's not worth the risk or reward. There might be an awesome conversation about music to be had, but he'd fear him getting weird on him. Sammy seems like he'd be a good version of the Dave road trip, just a little less bozy bop. But I'd worry Sam would make us get off at every third exit because he knows a cool barbecue joint or something.
I don't have a problem with that. For that reason alone, I would go with Sam.
Well, you love rest stops. So
I do. I thought you were going to say I love barbecue. I hate you. I walked right into that.
He says, with Wolfie, in many ways, he'd be the best choice, especially if you host a Van Halen podcast. Think of all the answers you could get about the outtakes that might be in the vault, behind the scenes, the future, and what the hell is up with his album. But other than Van Halen, I fear the age gap might be a little too much. Mike, he goes, definitely the choice here. Seems the most normal. I feel like we could switch back and forth between family and music and current events and just be normal. Hop in, Mike. So